In today's age, information and ideas are constantly changing. It becomes hard to distinguish the truth. In times of uncertainty, people are likely to stand firm with their beliefs. However, sticking to your beliefs can often stop you from knowing the truth. It is one of the reasons people often get into arguments. Author Adam Grant proposes that everybody should learn the skill of rethinking. In other words, there are hundreds of benefits if a person doubts things. It starts with understanding that you do not know everything. It may be difficult to accept, but it is also a tool that can help you think in creative and innovative ways. Rethinking requires humility. We have to admit that we do not know many things about the world. There are very few things of which we can indeed be certain. Acknowledging this and the possibility of being wrong is key to rethinking. A preacher, a prosecutor, a politician, and a scientist. Walk into your mind. The world is full of information. We have information at the touch of our fingertips. We are constantly bombarded with information at rapid rates. Information is also changing at fast speeds. This means that we need to think about our beliefs. For example, Pluto was considered a planet many decades ago. This is not the case in the past few years. Large amounts of time and research led to the conclusion that Pluto is not a planet. Scientists' opinions changed as more information became available. Second opinions happen. It is straightforward to think about getting a second opinion when you doubt someone. For example, when a doctor diagnoses you with a condition, you may want to consult another doctor. It becomes a little harder to be more objective when it comes to your own opinions. It is effortless to think you are right more than you are wrong. Consider the story of Stephen Greenspan, who was a victim of a financing scheme. Stephen has a sister named Jen. Jen had a friend named Gary, who was a financial advisor. Both Jen and Gary were investing in a particular fund. Both of them had seen high returns from this fund. Stephen was encouraged to invest his money in the same fund. He felt confident based on their experiences and encouragement. However, he consulted with Anna, a close friend, who did not share the same view. Anna warned Stephen against investing in the fund. Despite that, Stephen invested a third of his savings into the fund. He saw huge gains immediately. His portfolio had increased by 25%, but overnight, he lost all his money. The fund turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. In other words, the fund was a fraud. What led Stephen to make this disastrous decision? It is a matter of mindset. There are 3 types of mindsets that we fall into when discussing with others. These are preachers, prosecutors, and politicians. The preacher mindset comes into play when your beliefs are threatened. You will do anything to protect and promote your beliefs. The prosecutor mindset is when you see the flaws in other people's thinking. You will go out of your way to prove the other person wrong. The politician mindset is when you seek to win an audience. You will try to persuade another person to approve of your beliefs. The problem with these mindsets is that you do not think about your views. It never occurs to you to believe that you may be wrong. In Stephen's case, his sister was acting like a preacher. Jen kept talking about how well the fund had done. Her confidence led her to prosecute Anna, Stephen's cautious friend. Stephen also fell into the politician mindset. He wanted to win the respect and approval of Gary, who was a financial advisor. All 3 of these mindsets led Stephen to make poor financial decisions. The solution to avoiding these mindsets is to think like a scientist. Use the scientist mindset to think objectively and get more information. Scientists are not focused on being right. They are focused on knowing what they do not know yet. They are focused on updating their views based on evidence. It is a matter of making informed decisions. That does not mean that scientists are immune to other mindsets. Scientists can still think like preachers, prosecutors, or politicians. The key is to have your motives in the right place. Do not be attached to your beliefs or ideals. Focus on discovering instead of disproving another person. People often think that being smart means you will always make good decisions. That is not the case. If you cannot change your mind, you will not always make good decisions. Research shows that a higher IQ makes you more likely to fall for stereotypes. That is because your brain is more efficient at seeing patterns. This means that the more intelligent you are, the more difficult it may be to change your beliefs. It is often more difficult to acknowledge your limitations. It is difficult to admit you may be wrong even with new evidence. Dances with foes. Most people think that debates are about one person being right versus another. However, that is not the case. In formal debates, your goal is to change your audience's mind. They have an existing belief or opinion on a specific issue. In informal debates, you aim to change your partner's mind. Many people mistake debates for arguments. They are not. Debates are more like negotiations. Your goal is to get someone to agree with you on the truth of a subject matter. The key here is to open the audience's minds, not overwhelm them with reasons. Otherwise, they get defensive, and they are not likely to listen. If they are not open-minded, they will not consider what you have to say. Basically, you are trying to convince someone to rethink their beliefs. Author Adam Grant compares debates to dances. You are constantly adapting and negotiating on the direction. If you try too hard to lead your partner, she could end up resisting. If you can both coordinate your steps well, you can dance smoothly. It is not your goal to control your partner's movements. Your goal is to move together in sync. Consider this experiment of amateur and expert negotiators. Researchers studied how they negotiate a deal. During the preparation stage, amateur negotiators list all their reasons. They have arguments and defenses for their proposals. The experts did it differently. They gave fewer reasons to support their case. When you bombard someone with reasons and arguments, you provide her with plenty of options. Once she finds a weak argument, it is easy for her to reject your view. Once she rejects one argument, it becomes easier to reject the others. This does not help you open their minds and listen to you. It only makes it easier for them to reject you. Expert negotiators often ask questions instead of trying to defend themselves with reasons. They did not try to dominate the other party. They approached with curiosity. They asked questions to get more information. Expert negotiators use that information to help get to a deal that worked for both parties. This demonstrates a critical point. When you show that you are open to listening and changing your mind, the other person will too. It makes you less likely to be a preacher, prosecutor, or politician. You show that your goal is to get to the truth, not prove someone wrong. This makes you look more reasonable and credible. Research shows that people willing to admit their weaknesses are viewed positively. Showing that you are open to receiving new information is a good trait. This is true even in recruitment. People are more interested in hiring candidates who know their limits. It shows that the candidate is willing to learn. Human resource staff does not want to hire candidates who brag about qualifications. Charged conversations. Have you ever experienced an emotional argument? Perhaps it is about politics or issues like climate change or the death penalty. These arguments are often difficult to have with others. It can involve a lot of anger and frustration. It is not enough to simply hear the other person's opinion. Like most people, hearing a different opinion does not make you rethink yours. It probably just reinforces the feeling that you are right. This is the problem. Having two opposing views creates polarization. Polarization refers to causing a divide between two opposites, like beliefs. This feeling results from binary bias. It is natural for people to simplify a complex subject into two extremes. For example, labeling an argument on abortion as pro or anti-abortion. The topic itself is very complicated. There are many things to consider. The solution to this is to realize that there is a wide range of perspectives on a topic. It is not a simple yes or no, pro or anti. There are several ways to consider an issue. This added complexity can humble people. It shows that there are things that you may not know or have considered before. It provides you with additional information. That is another step to rethinking your position or belief about a matter. Consider this kind of experiment at the Difficult Conversations Lab in New York. People have the chance to debate with a stranger about abortion for 20 minutes. In the end, you will both decide if you agree on your views. Then you can sign a joint statement on your standard views about the issue. This statement is published on a public forum. The lab is run by a psychologist named Peter T. Coleman. Before the debate begins, Peter gives you and the stranger a news article. This news article is about a different issue from what you will be debating. For example, gun control. Peter gives every pair a different version of this one article. The version you receive can influence the outcome of your debate. Say that you and your partner both read a version that considers both sides of an argument. the likelihood that you and your partner will come to an agreement after the debate increases. In this experiment, 46% of pairs were able to agree and sign a joint statement. In another experiment, Peter gave the pairs a different version of the article. This version differs from the first. The first version discussed two sides of abortion. The second version approached abortion as a complex problem. It presented several perspectives. This led to 100% of the pairs signing a joint statement. The key takeaway is that complexity and multiple viewpoints both matter. Try to avoid simplifying arguments to two sides. This will help you think more critically. It will also make you less emotional and stubborn about complex issues. Instead, you will be able to handle these discussions maturely and calmly. It is important to learn this skill in today's age. We are consuming so much information at rapid rates. We must not be quick to simplify issues. We must recognize and appreciate complexity. Make sure you are aware of binary bias. Try to be aware of what perspectives you have not considered yet. That's not the way we've always done it. The skill of rethinking is not limited to individuals. It can also be done as a group. Sometimes it can be the difference between a group's survival. Organizations with strong cultures of learning can teach rethinking well. In learning cultures, it is typical for people to know the limits of their knowledge. They know that there are things they do not know yet. That makes them open-minded and more willing to try or learn new things. They are more likely to innovate. Here is an example of how failure to rethink had nearly cost someone's life. An astronaut named Luca Parmitano had nearly drowned while in space. He was on a spacewalk with his partner. Luca noticed that he was feeling a lot of water in the back of his helmet. It was too much water to be mistaken for sweat, so he communicated the issue back to Mission Control. Mission Control ordered Luca and his partner to end the spacewalk right away. However, this still took time. There were safety protocols to follow. As they prepared to return, water continued to fill Luca's helmet. It became more difficult to see and breathe. When they reached the airlock of the ship, they still had to wait. Luca's partner needed a few minutes to repressurize the airlock for their safety. At the last minute, Luca was able to remove his helmet. He survived. They later learned that there was a leak problem with the helmet. Before the spacewalk, Luca noticed some water droplets on his helmet. He informed the space crew. He and the space crew thought it was due to the drink bag in the suit. Every suit had a drink bag to keep astronauts hydrated. They assumed it was just a harmless leak in the drink bag. They did not think to investigate it further. The problem was that they thought drink bag leaks were normal. NASA has learned from many mistakes like this one. Being around very intelligent people can lead to overconfidence. When you are overconfident, you are less likely to be diligent about checking something. Luca's suit leak is an example of that. So how do you build a learning culture at your organization? How do you prevent people from being stubborn in their ways? How do you encourage people to rethink? Organizational learning should be a continuous activity. People should always be encouraged to review how they do things. They should take time to consider what can be improved. In many companies, it is typical to share best practices. This can apply to any work activity. For example, there are best practices when making presentations. There are best practices when communicating with a client. The problem with best practices is that they are often accepted without question. People rarely take the time to assess whether it is still working. Furthermore, people rarely take the time to check if the best practices can be improved or updated. It is not enough to simply focus on the best practices to achieve outcomes. Outcomes are good measurements for the short term. However, it can get in the way of long-term learning. Think about it this way. Focusing on performance means you will just do what it takes to get the task done. You will not think about how you are getting it done. This can be a disaster if the process or strategy is no longer effective. You become so used to simply doing it in a certain way. You will not stop to think about whether the process is still working anymore. Good strategies are focused on thinking and rethinking. Good strategies are formed when people are allowed to question and innovate. This is because people can think creatively and more critically. In your organization, focus on getting people to think and evaluate. Do not just focus on the outcome. Escaping tunnel vision. Many of us have grown up with one plan. Maybe you decided at the age of 7 that you were going to be a doctor. You direct all your academic choices towards this. But what happens when your plan does not work out? What if you face detours? For most people, rethinking the plan is not the first response. When a strategy fails, it is human nature to stick to it and try harder. However, that is usually the time when you should change plans. Research shows that this is especially true for entrepreneurs. Why do people insist on going about the same strategy if it's not working? Sunk costs are one factor. The sunk cost fallacy is when you insist on doing something even if it goes wrong. That is usually because it costs you precious resources like time or money. Most of the time, you become very attached to your decisions. You will do everything you can to rationalize your decision. More than anything, you want to be correct even when the evidence shows you are wrong. It is part of human psychology. It is straightforward to commit to one particular decision. It can easily become part of your identity. Let us say you chose to major in English when you entered college. You chose it because you love reading. As you progress, you realize that you hate writing. You do not have to finish the major. You are allowed to change your major to something else. Allow yourself to be open to other possibilities or options. Not doing so can stop you from growing. You do not give yourself the chance to learn more about yourself, your preferences, or your passions. Make sure that you take time to rethink your plans and commitments. You may have wanted something long ago, but perhaps not anymore. Do not let sunk costs keep you from pursuing something you do not enjoy. Many students fall into this trap. They are sure about a career they want when they are 20 years old. 10 years later, they hate their jobs. Always stay curious about new possibilities in the future. The critical takeaway is not to be afraid to let go and try something new. This is especially true for career choices. It takes trial and error. Sometimes you learn that you are better at something else. It is okay to let go of something that is not working out. You are allowed to change strategies or even jobs. Conclusion. In this book, you have learned the importance of knowing what you do not know. Humans are very prone to errors, biases, and poor judgments. It is part of human nature. That is why you must learn to rethink constantly. First, you learned about the typical mindsets people have regarding reason. Often, people are either preachers, prosecutors, or politicians. They will focus on changing another person's mind. Unfortunately, these methods only make it harder for another person to listen to you. You are less likely to change their mind. Instead, it is better to think like a scientist. Be humble about the limits of your knowledge. Be curious to learn from others. This makes other people more responsive to you. If they are willing to listen, it is easier to reason with them. Second, you learned about how to help others rethink. Assisting others to rethink is not about arguing. It is not about forcing your beliefs onto another person based on logic. It is more like dances or negotiations. You must work together to agree. You and your negotiating partner must be willing to listen and be open-minded with each other. Third, you learned about how to avoid binary bias. This is especially important when discussing emotionally charged issues like abortion. Understanding that there are multiple ways to view an issue is key. Thinking critically means appreciating a problem's complexity. Fourth, you learned that rethinking as a group can foster innovation and creativity. Do not get too attached to traditions. Take the time to assess whether a method or strategy is still effective. Lastly, you learned how rethinking could help you escape tunnel vision. It is very easy to get attached to one goal, like a career. Do not let sunk costs be an obstacle for you. Always keep your mind open to new directions and possibilities. It is very easy to get sucked into one way of thinking, especially with the internet and social media. That is why it is important to learn to rethink. Always keep an open mind. Stay curious. This will help you think more critically about various problems and issues. You should aim to be a lifelong learner. If you love this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you for watching.